All right, we are now officially recording.
Yes.
So,
Mr. Blackwell, thank you so much for being here. It's really an honor. I've been watching the case. I've been reading about you a lot the last months, and it's an honor to meet you. So I'm going to ask you a couple of questions about yourself and a couple of questions about the case, and we'll wrap it up then.
very good.
Yeah.
Good to meet you.
Yes. Thank you. So, Mr. Blackwell, your love for the law is displayed through the success of your firm and through your legal career. What inspired young Jerry Blackwell to choose the craft of the law?
I decided I wanted to be a lawyer at the ripe old age of 8 years old. Wow. And the second grade, the inspiration was my mother. I had 5 siblings. I was somewhere in the middle of the pack. And when you have a lot of siblings and an absolutely wonderful, delightful mother, she saw that I liked to read. And my mother said, given how much you love to read, you should be a lawyer. So my first thought to be a lawyer was because my mother suggested it, and I thought to be a lawyer would make my mother proud. So in the second grade, I decided I wanted to be a lawyer, and I never found since then anything I'd rather do. So it started with my mother suggesting it at 8, and here I am today at over 58.
At the top, I would say. That's a great story.
And I'm a lawyer.
So, yeah. My second question, talking about the case now. As a lawyer who worked exclusively on civil cases for companies like Walmart and other Fortune 500 companies, and I'm pretty sure you never worked on a criminal case ever again. Like you never trialed a criminal case before. So the George Floyd case would be the first one for you. How did you approach it differently in terms of preparation, and how did you prepare for it? Because it's a different field.
There were aspects of the case that were extremely different from being a civil lawyer as opposed to a criminal lawyer, and that certainly is true of the procedural aspects of the case, where criminal procedures applied, from the different rules that applied to how you deal with evidence or information that might be obtained by the prosecution that might be helpful to the defense. On the civil side, you would be required to disclose that unless properly requested. On the criminal side, you have to. So there were procedural things, things related to our discovery, factual discovery in the case, that were very different. Other things, though, were exactly the same. There is no such thing, for example, as a criminal jury as opposed to a civil jury. A jury is a jury, and they are there to determine ultimately who is right and who is wrong on the facts of the case, or whether they feel that we have met our burden of proof factually in the case. So the persuasive elements are the same. That thinking about the case thematically, what are the things? For example, you can believe your eyes. It's homicide, it's murder, is an example of a theme.
Yeah.
So thematically, it's the same. Figuring out how do you tell your story?
What the pattern, everything. Yeah.
What's the same? And ultimately, you are engaged in the same process, whether civil or criminal, in trying to have 12 people understand the case as we see it, and then to see it the way we see it. And so that was the same.
Yeah. So my third question is, I wanted to ask you about such a call.
Yeah, you froze there for just a second. I heard you say, I want to ask you about, and I didn't hear the rest of the question.
I'll repeat my question. Sorry. Okay. Is that better?
It is for now, yes.
So my third question is, I wanted to ask you about the Attorney General when he called you. What was your reaction? And I don't think you expected such a call from the Attorney General to represent George Floyd in the state of Minnesota. Just that's the question.
Well, I start with this case. For me, wasn't a case. It was more akin to a cause. And when I saw the video, at least a part of it I did see, I was as outraged as many were all over the world about what is depicted or seen in that video. And I had decided there, watching it, that I wanted to do anything I could to help with the pursuit of justice around this particular incident. I didn't know what that meant at the time. I just know this is the time to stand up and be counted, no matter what happens to you. You have to stand up. And then out of the blue, the next week, I got a call from the Attorney General asking if I would agree to be a special prosecutor in the case. And so my fervor then united with his request. And I said yes right away. Careful to point out, as you already knew, I've never handled a criminal case, but I had tried a number of cases all around the country. And so I had good trial experience. I did not think I would be necessarily on the front line in the trial. I thought I might be behind the scenes, helping out with strategy and themes and witness preparation and so on. So the evolutionary surprise for me was being on the front line as one of the main two trial lawyers in the case. And that was surreal is the word I'd use.
Yeah. So I want to comment on your answer and ask you, you took the case pro bono. Is that true?
That is very true.
Wow. So
for the public
yeah,
good.
I respect you so much for that.
For the public good. And it was, I don't recommend that for most people like yourself, when you're charting your course in life, I would certainly suggest you be very methodical and very thoughtful and very careful and planned and analytical. And you should never do kind of what I did on this instance where it made sense, which is to jump first and then check the pool for water second. In this case, it made all the sense in the world that it was a calling, and I just simply, jumped and looked to see if there's water in the pool afterward, and because it was that kind of a commitment here, and my getting paid wasn't paramount in my mind. How I kept my law firm afloat wasn't my first thought either. My caseload wasn't. It was just do what you can for this cause, because it matters so much to what justice means for so many people in this country and outside of this country. It has a lot to do with the relationship, certainly of communities of color, to the police and policing, and frankly, even to the democratic experiment known as America, that it meant a lot to a great number of people for these, to me, very important issues and questions. Definitely.
So I wanna comment on a quote that really touched me when you said it in the trial, and I felt like it touched so many people's heart. After that day, we talked, me and my friends, about this quote, the sentence you said. You said you were told that Mr. Floyd died because his heart was too big, but after seeing the evidence, the truth of the matter is that the reason George Floyd is dead is because Mr. Chauvin's heart was too small. Why did you feel this quote, this sentence, connected with so many people?
I felt it just really summarized the entire case in a sentence.
Yeah.
It said it all about the excessive use of force. It said it all about causation. And it said it all, in my mind, about what was fundamentally lacking in this case, which is an embrace of the humanity that ought to unite us all. That humanity and caring was lacking, that if he had the compassion of the 9-year-old little girl, George Floyd would still be alive. And so while all this time was spent focusing on George Floyd and why it is that George Floyd was supposedly responsible for his own death because of the size of his heart and his arteries and his high blood pressure and his paraganglioma and all the other things that were raised, focused on him, when the real truth of the matter was that the only reason he was gone was because of the lack of compassion and caring and empathy that Mr. Chauvin had taken an oath to provide to the public, that his heart was too small. And I thought it was a perfect contrast between the focus on George Floyd and the size of his heart, when the focus should have been on how small was the heart of Mr. Chauvin. And I thought it was the perfect line to end on because in my mind, it said it all. And after saying it, nothing else needed to be said.
Definitely. So what do you think, like, after all this stuff, after the case, and I know the sentencing is a couple of weeks ahead, what do you think should be done to avoid another horrible situation like this? What precautions should we take to avoid things like this in the future?
Well, guys, there are really so many that an incident like this the tragedy that happened with George Floyd didn't just sort of happen out of the blue in simply a moment. There is a history and an evolutionary pattern of the dealings of police with the public and communities, certainly communities of color, that this arises out of. One of the hopes that I have is that if there are officers who are willing to be that brazen in how they treat the public and or mistreat the public, then this ought to give them pause, that there can be accountability if that happens, so that we have fewer officers who are willing to behave that way because they know there could be accountability. But my hope is also that this will be an inspiration to other police officers to stand up and speak out, as the officers did here, thanks to the leadership of Chief Arredondo, the chief of the Minneapolis Police Department, who took this by
He testified, yeah.
They did, and was the leader for a great many others. That I would want other of the good police officers to be inspired to step forward and to understand that speaking out against bad policing is in the absolute best interest of good policing, and to see more of them standing up. And ultimately, I hope that there is a renewed sense of at least optimism or at least less skepticism in the minds and hearts of the public about their ability to make a difference, that it isn't just a futility. Take your cell phones, use those cameras, document what you see, that there can be accountabilities, and we live in a smaller world, that whether it is Donnella Frazier in Minneapolis, who takes the video, or Basil in Jordan, who now sees it and responds with a sense of outrage, yourself and your friends there, that it matters. And it matters to all of us. And the humanity that unites us all should be far, far greater than any of the ideas that divide us. And all the sectarian ideas, all the ideas of blue lives, black lives, nation states, all these are just ideas that separate us from the fundamental humanity. And in my view, the embrace of life, the love of life, is itself a moral value, and that we should embrace it as a moral value, to be preserved and to be deemed sacrosanct.
Oh, so my last question, what is your advice to people trying to become lawyers, or what is your philosophy that you followed since you were young to reach the place you are today? And what advice would you give to me, for example?
Yeah, so for you, first of all, Basil, I would say pick up your briefcase and follow me. First and foremost.
I'm gonna be at Chicago about 2 months from now, studying at college. So maybe I'll visit you one day.
No, I would love that. You come here, you can call me. I'm easy to find, as you see. Call me. But the other thing I would say is follow the rules to success in life generally to everyone. That first and foremost, try to find something that you think you will love to do. That's your heart's calling. And if you can find it, and if you follow it, you never work a day in your life, because you're doing what you love. And sometimes you pinch yourself to believe you get paid to do it. Of course, if you volunteer pro bono, you will not get paid to do it, but you will still love it. So that's the first thing. And the second thing that I would say is pick a worthwhile goal. You should pick a vision for yourself that's greater than anything you imagine you could ever do. I never imagined that I would be in a case that would be the most watched trial in the history of planet Earth, much less criminal trial, given I've never even handled a criminal case. But shoot high, shoot for the moon. You don't
never
have
say
to,
never.
No, right. You don't even have to know how you're going to get there. How I'm going to be the Attorney General for the United States of America, that I'm going to be the lead lawyer for. And you don't necessarily have to know how. You just simply lean in from that point and just keep working at it, and do not quit. Most people do not succeed because they quit. They lose heart, they lose interest, and they quit. And that's why most people don't achieve what they set out to do. And the other thing I would just sort of remind you of, which I don't have to remind you because I can see it's already a part of you, is that always kind of bring with you the idea that that you will do good for others along the way as you receive opportunity, that in seeking the welfare of others, you will find your own well-being always. And there's always time and space to do that, whether you represent mostly corporations, which is what I've mostly done. But in the process of representing the corporations, I stopped the caravan, got off for a while to try to do a good service that had nothing to do with corporations. And we can all do that. So I would also encourage you always to bring the good along with you. And you don't have to step completely out of your life to do it. You just pay attention as you travel along for the good you can do along the way, and just do the good you can. And it always comes back to you manyfold if you do that.
Wow, thank you so much,
No,
Mr.
thank you
Blackwell.
so
It's
much.
an honor.
And
It's really an
and so despite the fact you're not at Jordan High School in Jordan, Minnesota, which is funny to me.
one day.
If you do come to Chicago,
Yes,
I hope you will send me a note or just an email
definitely.
in general. I'd love to follow you to see what you're doing.
Definitely.
So
We'll be working together one day.
well, see now that's a dream now, isn't it?
Yeah, it is a dream.
So I'm looking for a good lawyer. So you know,
Yeah.
your
Well, you
odds are
have one right here.
your odds are pretty good. So you're going to start school. You're going to school here, did you say?
Yeah, I'm gonna go to a school in Chicago, Trinity, if you know Trinity College in Chicago. Yeah.
When do you start there?
I'm gonna start in mid-August, 16th, 20th, about that time.
And then thereafter, then law school.
Hopefully. That's the dream. That's the big goal.
All right. Well, that's a good, I call it a BHAG, BHAG, a big, hairy, audacious goal. And to choose for yourself. And I generally encourage people to write it down. Nobody has to know but you, but write it down, put it in a drawer, that energize it, that
Manifest
I
it.
intend to do this. Manifest it is right. So,
Yeah.
and if I am a living proof of anything, it's that principle, guarantee you. So I'm glad you're watching all the way from Jordan.
From the start.
The real Jordan. And
Yes.
and I do look forward to hearing from you again.
Thank you so much.
So I'm going to stop the recording here.
Yes.
One moment.